your car, go to Mum's, kill Phil, grab Liz, go to the Winchester, have a nice cold pint, and wait for all this to blow over. How's that for a slice of fried gold?
Hello, and welcome to episode 175 of Pop Culturally Deprived, where each week we watch a movie I've never seen before, which is most of them, and talk about the good, the bad, and the cornetto. This week we're going to be talking about Shaun of the Dead on your You Don't Want to Die Single, Do You? Podcast. I'm Mandy Kay, and when I am not watching movies for this podcast, you can find me on Twitter at Mandy Kay.
And I'm Matthew Rose. You can find me on Twitter at Matthew Rose. Does cornetto mean anything to you?
Not even a little bit. I had no idea what it was until I saw the ice cream cone thing on the screen, and it said cornetto on it.
Not even just one cornetto.
Just one cornetto, give it to me. Delicious ice cream and memory.
No.
Okay.
I've never heard that word in my life.
Okay.
Should it mean something to me?
No, it's one of those things. You have no idea how these things travel or not. And this is the first film in the Cornetto trilogy. So cool.
It's a thing?
Yes.
Like, it's a thing.
I mean,
Okay.
cornettos are an established ice cream sold over here in a wrapper. So cool.
I mean, it reminded me of a drumstick. That's what we call this here.
Yeah, I mean, imagine it's got, it's a conical thing, and it's got some ice cream in the top, and it's got paper around it with a bit of paper on top of it. It's also, as I have found, referred to as the Blood and Ice Cream trilogy. But I think that's by people who don't want to use brand names in things like the name of their wiki files and so on. So,
what's the third movie in this trilogy?
Well, it's The World's End. Let's talk about that once we watch Hot Fuzz.
Okay.
This might be a trilogy we
Alright.
don't finish, just FYI. Hey, we're doing British Movie Month.
We are apparently doing British Movie Month. Because Matthew has decided we are now a themed podcast, and that's what we do.
I like themes. It makes them, because otherwise we end up sitting looking at this list of 200 films going, well, we could watch that, I suppose. We could watch. I'm so into the idea of, like, next month it's New Zealand month. Next month it's this month. Awesome.
No, because I really want to watch John Wick 3, and I don't think you can find a theme that we can plug that into, so...
There are always
when
more...
we're done with British movies...
Keanu Reeves movies.
There are
what we should have done is we should have transitioned and done The Matrix 3 into John Wick 3 and done, 2 Keanu films, but wrapping up trilogies month.
I'm pretty sure we can probably find some more, not trilogies, but like sequels, like next in line movies for franchises that we're watching. So we can do like franchise continuation month.
We could pinch from our friends over at Cult Popture and do film franchise finales.
Ooh, maybe.
But we're doing British month.
But we are doing British month right now, and
mostly because I think we keep talking about British films obliquely or specifically, depending on what it is. But the ones that we've done have been sort of event films, big ticket items. 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Shakespeare in Love, Monty Python. We did the Pride and Prejudice series. So I'm kind of interested in doing some smaller films, some, films that have international recognition, as we will see.
Right. I was going to say, does Shaun of the Dead count as a smaller film?
Certainly when it came out, yes.
Okay.
This is the film that put some of the people in it and making it on the map. In terms of movies. So, it was small when it came out. I also want to say up front, so I was debating whether we do this or not. I actually went to, I've mentioned the Rule of Three podcast, so It's a comedy podcast by comedy writers who interview other comedians and comedy writers about comedy that they love, so they can try to dig into what comedy is, this kind of thing.
Okay.
I found it when they had Darrow O'Brien on talking about Eddie Izzard, and they've had Aisling B on talking about Father Ted. You know, people who talk about something that clearly means a lot to them, and it's really interesting stuff.
Okay.
I went to a live taping of that podcast where they had on a young comedian talking about how Shaun of the Dead was so important to him. So I'm going to make sure I link to that in the show notes, because it was a really good discussion. I've not re-listened to it because I don't want to be either completely pinching some of the stuff they said, although there is one thing that stands out that we're going to cover, but I also don't want to be shying away from things because they said it.
Right.
So I'm hoping, Watch might
No,
cover
that
some of
makes
the same
sense.
stuff. But they do it in a very comedic sense, but in a how it's made to be funny and how it's made to be a film story, from these young creatives, this kind of thing. So I'm going to say that now. Everyone should listen to that after us, because then you can hear them pinching stuff of us. Maybe.
I feel like we need a disclaimer. All thoughts on this podcast are our own.
Drink
Anything
Coke.
that sounds like someone else may have thought of is absolutely unintentional.
Obey Hypnotoad. So I don't know, when we've done other theme months, we've talked about Keanu Reeves, and we've talked about women directors and vampire movies and so on. We've done I'm not even sure we can do a discussion on British cinema.
I don't know that we can, simply from the fact that I'm still largely unaware of British cinema. And so the answer to my question of why I never saw this was literally just because British movies were not on my radar ever. Especially back in 2004. I didn't even discover Doctor Who until 2013.
Right, yeah.
Right? And I mean, everybody knows that I'm a huge Whovian now. My wedding bands are going to be Doctor Who themed.
Bless you.
Right? It's a thing. And in 2004, I still lived in such an American-centric world that I didn't even realize they made movies other places. If a movie was made, it was made in Hollywood.
Right, okay.
That's the world that I lived in back then. There's no way. I have a vague... No, I did not hear... The first movie I heard of with Simon Pegg was Hot Fuzz.
Okay.
And when I saw it, I was like, that looks really stupid. I don't care. And we'll talk about that again when we get to Hot Fuzz later this month. But Shaun of the Dead, I think I only have heard of it tangentially over the last few years, people just mentioning it, because British film is not something that was a part of my life until I met you.
and that's a little bit the thing, isn't it? The British films that you do know of and have seen are Shakespeare in Love.
Love Actually.
Yeah, exactly. Massive films that are made in such a way to appeal to an international audience, that don't have references to Cornetto and just some of that sort of random stuff going on, that aren't quite so entrenched in British culture in quite the same way. So the films that we are covering are films that have succeeded internationally, but also are, I think, quite rooted in British culture. And it's so hard to define what a British film is, because I think I've talked about it before, Star Wars are British films. They were made here. So they're British films.
Oh, okay.
Most of what Kubrick made is a British film, but he didn't make particularly British films in terms of the culture. And there are British films that we're not going to be watching that are dreary and dismal about the hardships people go through in their lives, that are very hard. They're not, necessarily entertainment as we talk about pop culture entertainment.
Right.
And then there's things that we are just ignoring. So I did a poll on Twitter, hey, should we watch Carry On movie? And everyone was like, no, do not watch the Carry On movies. They're a massive part of the history of British cinema, but they are also utterly sexist and horrid. But there was part of me thinking, look, this is a franchise of, it must be 20 films plus. It's a massive franchise. But also it's awful. It's an excuse for men to be lascivious at women. In an incredibly soft-core way, but...
To be fair, I don't know what movies we're doing for British Month apart from Shaun of the
Well,
Dead
so
and Hot
I
Fuzz.
was going to
Matthew
return
has
when you
not
said Hot
told
Fuzz,
me.
because we're not doing Hot Fuzz.
We're not.
We're not doing Hot Fuzz, just so we're complete.
Then I have no idea what movies we're doing besides Shaun of the Dead.
So we are doing Shaun of the Dead. We're doing Remains of the Day. So a, quasi-period Merchant Ivory production. We're doing Dr. No. Because James Bond is British cinema.
You're making me watch James Bond.
Let's watch
movie?
a James Bond. Let's watch the first James Bond before James Bond became James Bond. If we're doing British cinema, that feels like a good place to go. And
I'm not excited about this.
And to be honest with you, we don't have to. If you want to find a different British film for us to watch, we can watch a different British film. But
I mean, you're the resident Brit. I feel like I have to defer to you on this one.
and it's hard because I do not really like James Bond, but I'm also interested in watching Dr. No. Let's go back
Okay.
to Sean Connery doing it originally. And we're also doing Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels,
Okay.
which is sort of
I've heard you mention that.
yeah,
movie
the
before.
start of modern British cinema, I
Okay.
think. But whether that's right or not, I don't know.
All
So
right.
a bit of a variety in there. Good, good. Zombie movies. That's what we're talking about. Do you want to give us a brief synopsis of this film?
IMDb had the briefest of brief synopses on this one, and I stole it, as I often do, but I really like this one. A man's uneventful life is disrupted by the zombie apocalypse.
Good. Let's return to that when we talk about what this movie is about later on.
Okay.
A bit of history for everyone. Shaun of the Dead is a 2004 zombie romantic comedy directed by Edgar Wright, starring Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, and Kate Ashfield. It was written by Wright and Pegg after creating a zombie episode of their sitcom series, Spaced. Many zombies in the film were fans of the series who were invited to spend a week filming the zombie crowd scenes, and other comedy actors were also included as cameo zombies. Shaun of the Dead performed very well at the box office. It earned $30 million against a $6 million budget and started the film careers of Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright. Hot Fuzz and The World's End would be made with the same actors in different situations and stories to follow up.
So, different characters?
Yeah, it's utterly different stuff, but
Okay.
sort of
So, like, not the same universe at all.
in the same way people refer to Romeo and Juliet and Moulin Rouge as Baz Luhrmann's red carpet duology, and then I think Great Gatsby is the third of that. They're all
okay.
different, but also his style and his vibe comes to it to create it as sort of thing.
Okay.
So how were you able to watch this over there?
I signed up for the 7-day free trial of the Cinemax channel on Amazon
Cinemax.
so I could watch it. Yes.
Okay.
Because that's where it was. Or I could have spent $4.99 on it.
Why does Cinemax make me think of like American Pie jokes about trying to watch nudie movies?
Because Cinemax is also colloquial known as Skinemax.
Skinemax. Okay, right. I am thinking the right thing.
Because I don't know if it's... I mean, it is a cable movie channel, but I haven't had it in so long. As a child growing up, like, it was a normal movie channel during the day,
Mm-hmm.
but, like, after 9 o'clock, it had movies children were not allowed to watch.
Okay. Okay, cool.
I don't know if they still do that, but
Streaming.
Shaun of the Dead
Right.
was one of them.
Cool.
The movies that were available. I saw another one that I really wanted to see. Oh, Ever After is a featured movie on Cinemax
Oh, nice.
right now,
Nice.
which is an amazing movie. So, I mean, Cinemax has great stuff on it. I don't know if they still do the adult movies.
On their actual box channel.
Yeah,
Cool.
I don't know.
Over here, it's on Amazon Prime Video. It's
course
on
it is.
Sky Cinema. And I own the DVD.
Of course it is. Of course you do.
I saw this at the movies when it came out. And actually watching one of the trailers today, I can remember even watching one of the trailers and going, okay, yes, I'll enjoy that. I was a bit cool on this when it came out.
Really?
And we could talk about this a little bit more. I enjoyed it well enough, but not raving about. But then I think I got the DVD because it was about £4. Something like, it's one of those kind of in the bin in a supermarket or something. You're like, oh, Shaun of the Dead, yeah, let's watch that again. It is significantly better on the small screen than it was on the big screen. I think it's one of my big things with this.
I can see that, actually.
I think it really shows that this is TV director and writer transitioning.
Yeah.
And there is stuff that we'll talk about that, when they do it large, they do it really well. But also, it's got that sort of TV vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to quantify it, but... So, Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, they're the main people in this. What's your experience of the three of them?
When I hear Edgar Wright, I think of Baby Driver,
Mm-hmm.
which I've never seen.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But it was so big when it came out, and everybody was like, oh my God, it's the most amazing movie ever. So that's what I equate him with, even though I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
So I looked through his filmography. I have seen Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, but I don't remember it.
Oh.
Like, almost nothing. You're looking at me like this is a travesty.
It's a wonderful film.
And then he wrote Ant-Man, or was a co-writer on Ant-Man.
Yeah, he's one of the early examples of Marvel getting rid of directors. Or directors walking away for creative differences. I think what he did, Joss Whedon wishes he had done with Avengers 2.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Simon Pegg.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know his name.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think of him, when I see his face now, I think of Star Trek.
Okay, fair.
The new one, the Kelvin timeline.
Yeah, he's Scotty.
And, yes. Apparently, he's in the Mission Impossible franchise, which means I have seen him, because I have seen at least 2 of those movies.
Okay.
Everything else did not seem super familiar to me. Apparently, he was in Star Wars, but
He's
I don't remember
the
that.
giant trader. He's under lots of prosthetic stuff. He's the trader in The Force Awakens that Rey sells stuff to, and he tries to buy the droid off her.
Yeah. And I mean, he did a voice in like a Doctor Who Confidential thing, and he did an episode of Doctor Who, but every British actor ever has done that. So,
basically, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I know his name and his face more than I know his work. And I don't really know why, but I do.
He's one of the Brits who has done well in America.
That's probably why, then.
So, give him that. He was Ogden Morrow in Ready Player One.
Yes, he was.
Which I thought would stand out to you.
Fun fact, I learned last week that Ready Player 2 is coming out in November. The book. Nick Frost. I looked through his filmography. His face looks familiar to me, and I couldn't place him.
Okay.
But I have seen Penelope and Snow White and the Huntsman. So maybe that's where I know his face from.
Okay.
Like, none of these are, like, I know their names, but I don't really watch their work.
He is much more of a Brit actor than having made it in America. Did you see Kinky Boots? Either the musical or the thing? The film? Okay.
No. I didn't know there was a film.
Okay. Well, it's based on a film.
Oh, okay.
And the drag queen transgender person in it is Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Okay.
He's really good.
In the film?
Yeah. He's really good. I'm definitely inserting a clip of him saying red here.
Red!
Red, Charlie! Red!
Red is the color of sex and fear and danger and signs that say do not enter.
It's wonderful.
Okay. If you say so.
Please, God, tell me I have not inspired something burgundy.
It's wonderful.
Okay.
He's. I would tell you the thing that he was in Kinky Boots if you'd seen Kinky Boots. You have not seen Kinky Boots, so I'm not going to tell you that thing. I have realised. I'm going to pause the podcast discussion of Shaun of the Dead here. I have realised we skipped over something earlier that we should have talked about up front. So we'll talk about it here. I'll either leave it here and everyone will be like, no, crack on with the film. We're here for the film discussion. You're engaged. This is the first podcast where you're engaged.
Yes.
You mentioned wedding bands, and I'm fairly sure like half our listeners are probably like, wait, what? When did this happen? What's going on? We should probably,
Yes, I did get engaged the week prior to this recording.
Which is admittedly 3 weeks ago from when this comes out, so.
Yes. There are pictures on Twitter.
Absolutely. But I feel we should address it, Yeah. Good. Other similar material. So, this is a zombie film. It's listed as a zombie romantic comedy. To the extent the URL for this film was romzom.com. Because they called it a romzomcom. Romantic zombie comedy.
Wow. I wouldn't have... Oh, wow. I was going to say I wouldn't have pegged it for that, but I feel like I can't say that.
Nice.
Simon
Nice. High five.
Yeah, when I saw that description in your outline, I was taken aback by it because this did not feel like a romantic comedy at all.
Okay.
To me. Even though there was a relationship, and in the end, the relationship had a happily ever after.
Mm-hmm. By your definition?
By my definition, a romantic comedy has to have a happily ever after, but that does not mean every happily ever after is a romantic comedy.
Okay.
And this feels like the latter to me.
I probably agree with you, but for different reasons. Let's talk a little bit zombie films. Obviously, this is based on George A. Romero's Of the Dead trilogy, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and he then went on to do Diary of the Dead, Land of the Dead, Day of the Dead.
You have not seen any of those.
You haven't seen any of them?
None.
You have not seen Night of the Living Dead?
I have not.
Okay. You haven't seen...
It's in black and white, right?
It is black and white.
Yeah.
It is.
So you
it
should
is
know
very
I
black.
have not seen that, Matthew.
And very white. Yes. You haven't seen Dawn of the Dead? You haven't seen the remake of Dawn of the Dead? That came out like 2 weeks before this?
No.
Which was a big marketing faux pas from one of those film companies, I think. Have you seen 28 Days Later? Have you seen other zombie things?
My main experience with zombies is The Walking Dead.
Okay.
And then once I realized zombies in The Walking Dead was a thing I enjoyed, I did watch Zombieland.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good shout. Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's my zombie experience there. There's some books and stuff I've read.
Have you read World War Z?
I've seen World War Z, but I have not read it.
Okay.
Yes, I say Z, not Z.
Ugh.
I only watched it because Brad Pitt was in it. It was weird.
I loved that book. I read it and I dreamed about it. It was so good.
Really?
One of the best books I've ever read.
All right. I might have to put that on my list. I've been reading a lot more lately.
Really good.
So, this is a style of horror film, though, that's very similar to other movies that we've talked about recently.
Mm-hmm.
You don't look convinced.
No, go on, make your point. We'll come back to it in a bit.
But, so I used to think that horror movies were just horror movies, right? And then we have movies like The Evil Dead, which are campy, but take themselves seriously. They're not intended to be camp. Mm-hmm. But that has spawned this new generation, well, new, I don't know if it's new, quotation marks, new, of horror comedy films. Not just straight horror. So you get things like Cabin in the Woods, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, What We Do in the Shadows. Mm-hmm. And this movie fits into that mold for me.
Got it.
It's horror, but it's not gory scare jumps, suspenseful music, what's lurking around the corner. Mm-hmm. And that makes it much easier for me to enjoy.
Got it. Okay. Shaun of the Dead, did you enjoy it?
I did.
Yeah?
I didn't think I would, but I did.
Okay. At what point did you think, oh, actually I am enjoying this?
That's a very good question. I mean, I fully related to Simon Pegg's character the moment he sat
Shaun.
down to play. Yes, his name is Shaun. Thank you. I fully related to the character of Shaun when he sat down to play video games with Ed, and Ed reminded him, "No, you have to go to work."
Okay, so
and he
scene
had to
2.
turn the video game off and get up and go to work. Yes, Shaun, I feel you. I do that every day. And I don't know, there's so much going on in this movie, and this movie was done really well. The way that I watch movies now is just different from how I used to, and so I was picking up from the beginning, all of the little things that were happening
Right.
that were leading you to know that this was a zombie movie. I mean, granted, for most people, Shaun of the Dead, you probably know it's a zombie movie.
Mm-hmm.
The website was Zomcom, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
they marketed it as a zombie movie.
Romzom.com, which I have no idea if it's still up or
Romzom.
not,
But like watching how oblivious he was to like the news reports going on around him, dead people in the streets,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. I was just like watching it, wondering how they were going to get this to be a cohesive story.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it. And so I was pretty engaged from the beginning, even though it was very mundane in the beginning.
Mm.
Like it opens with him having a conversation with Liz about how crappy their relationship is.
Yeah, she wants more.
In public,
yeah.
in front of their friends, a conversation they should not be having in front of their friends, right? And I'm like, this is kind of weird. How's this going to be zombies? And then you hear the news reports in the background. You see him when he does go to work, flipping through the news channels, utterly oblivious to what's happening on the screen, but we see it. And so that like piqued my interest enough that I wanted to watch more.
Mm.
And so then the more I watched, the more I was invested and involved.
Nice.
So
Yeah, it does
I don't think
really
there was-
grab you in really well.
yeah, I don't think there was a specific moment.
Okay.
It was just kind of the entire ambiance of the movie.
Right.
And I don't know that if I had watched this in 2004 that I would have picked up on all of the subtle signs that were in the background.
Mhm.
Like I probably would have been just as oblivious
Right.
as Shaun was.
There is an aspect of that they're leaning on the sort of tropes of horror, the language of
Mhm.
horror to tell you some of this stuff until you finally get to that point where he wakes up hungover and walks to the shop again, and the world has fallen to pieces overnight. You know.
And he still doesn't see it. Like he slips in the blood.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. I read an interesting thing that in writing this, Edgar Wright had gone through something similar, where we had an epidemic over here with cows catching foot and mouth disease, and
Okay.
it destroyed the British beef industry because
Okay.
suddenly whole herds were having to be put down and burned.
Mhm.
And he apparently there's a story that he turned on the news one day, having not paid attention to it for a couple of weeks, and there were pictures of giant herds of cows being burned. And he's like,
I can imagine that.
wait,
could be
what's
terrifying.
going on? So, he had this thing of like, it is possible to go a little bit without paying attention and to lose what's actually going on. 2020 is a weird year to discuss this. You know?
Yeah, I was just thinking when the pandemic started, like a couple weeks after, there were news reports of Jared Leto because he had been in the desert for 2 weeks. No phone, no internet, no social media,
Right.
by himself. Had no idea the world was falling apart and came out to this news.
Right, yeah.
Right. And I kind of see that as very, very similar.
I think I read a similar thing about a couple sailing from America to Italy or something. That
Were
just
they
had the
allowed
same
in?
thing. The point that I'm going to steal from Rule of Three, because the point is very good, but they make it very eloquently. The advertising for this wanted it to be, it's a zombie romantic comedy, because that's kind of the funny, we're doing something silly, it helps set us apart from other zombie films, the other zombie film coming out that summer. But actually, this is a coming-of-age story. This is a young man going from being young man with his mates playing video games into living with a woman, being in a relationship, being in a
Yes.
committed relationship, putting down the childish toys
Okay.
thing.
You just don't usually see coming of age stories about 29-year-old men, which I think is an interesting twist.
I think you see more. I think perhaps more in British comedy. I think this might be part of the thing of it. This is, and again, it sort of helps that it's a TV basis for these people. That is a very standard
Mhm.
TV story. It's the story of friends. It's them going from hanging out with their friends to getting into relationships and this kind of thing. But whilst that is the story that's going on here, the film has the trappings of a zombie film. So the zombie film has sort of crashed the set of this coming-of-age film, this story of growth. And they're just dealing with it whilst they're also doing the, Sex and the City story. Shall we, shan't we? What do we have to give up to be together?
Right. I don't think that Shaun would have come of age, so to speak, if we hadn't had the zombie apocalypse, though.
No. But I think any story like that, any coming-of-age story, has some sort of inciting incident that causes the people to change and go through and try to do something. Whether it's a chosen one narrative, whether it's a zombie narrative, you know.
Right.
So I like that point. I think that's quite, and I think the film works better on that. My issue with it is, once they get to the pub, the film doesn't know what to do with itself. This is where I think, having, you know, spent 15 years thinking about why I'm not so hot on this film as other people were, I think it's that point when they get to the pub and it sort of just drifts off, and it's like, so what do we do now? Well, okay, we can have her be bit and we can deal with that thing. We can deal with relationships between them, but it's like, we either have to become a coming-of-age story and have that be at the forefront, or we have to be a zombie story. And at that point, it becomes a zombie story. Everyone dies, and our heroes just about make it out, but may or may not live in the end. Who knows?
Right.
So.
Except then they do live.
Except they do. They give them the... Because a lot of zombie films end with everyone dies.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. I was expecting Shaun to live. I wasn't really expecting anybody else to live.
Okay.
Like maybe Ed.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly didn't expect Liz to live.
Oh, really?
She's female and blonde. She's not supposed to live
Right,
by the standards of Hollywood, but this is a British movie,
Mm.
not a Hollywood movie, right? And so for those two to be the ones that make it, I think that's great. And most zombie movies or horror movies like this, you do end up with a love interest where the two people end up together. I'm thinking of the remake of The Hills Have Eyes.
Okay. Not seen it, but okay.
Or The House. No, not The Hills Have Eyes. The House on Hill House.
Okay.
The House on
Haunted Hill?
I don't actually know what movie I'm talking about. But I remember going to see this movie in the theater, and I knew within the first 2 minutes which two characters were going to survive.
Right.
And it was a man and a woman who just met at the beginning of the movie.
Okay.
And so usually the romance builds because of the conflict and having to survive together. And so that was different here. Like, we're taking an established relationship that is having its own conflict, but this apocalyptic conflict is bringing them back together.
Yeah.
And so I actually found that to be quite nice. That it, for me, it was not the standard Hollywood trope that you see in these kinds of movies.
Yeah, it absolutely could have been. If you take out all the zombie trappings, he is like, yeah, there's plenty more fish in the sea. It's not the end of the world. Has a fling with another girl, the 40-year-old virgin. It could be, you know, has a series of dates with different women, realizes they're all crazy. God, but my Liz is the one I want. Does the big, I love you, whatever thing he has to do. And they end up together, and he sacrifices some of his childhood youth stuff to be with her. And she accepts that actually he's a bit fun, because she's also been on dates with Ty Burrell and, you know, other people who are a bit dull or a bit silly themselves, and realizes that he's the one she loves, you know.
Yeah.
And that would probably be a fine romantic comedy. But they went a different way with this. They decided to have zombies crashing the thing. And I quite love the way they do it. I just think that Act 3, they don't, again, you know, we talked about this before, they don't integrate the two stories.
Right. Not at all.
Yeah, so.
Not at all.
But we're here to talk British films. Let's talk about the Britishness of it. What stood out to you? What was weird about it to you? What did you like? What did you think?
So, one of my early comments is... Hang on, where is it? I don't know. Apparently my comment's not actually there. I swear I thought I put it in there. But if I didn't know better, I would really think that everybody in England is really deeply unhappy.
Yeah, there is an aspect to that, isn't there?
Like, everybody, from the people on the bus, the customers in the shop, the people in the pub. Is that just like a British thing?
I think,
is that a Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright thing?
Yeah, they're doing sort of, because it's North London, but it's a small suburb of North London. So they're just like they're doing the nice thing of people just going about their lives. So people do just sit on the bus, and people do. Pub culture is obviously a bit different over here to bar culture, but there are people who just go and sit in the pub of an evening, and maybe chat to the people around them. But that's just what they do. So like it's interesting that it comes across as unhappy, but I can also see that it's people do the same thing every day, and that's what you do in your life. You stay in the same area you were raised in.
Well, that's fine, but nobody smiled.
No.
Like, ever. Everybody just had this very, like, dour look on their face.
And the other commentary they're doing is, aren't we all zombies already? The whole bit at the beginning with the, Mary in the supermarket. And the guys with the supermarket trolleys and so on. Just beeping things.
Well, and even Shaun waking up in the morning.
Yeah. But not even as heavy-handed as, he's acting like a zombie. They are just turned off for the day because they're just going about their routine. Yeah.
Which they actually inserted very well back at the end of the movie. I didn't expect that, although, God, watching it occurred to me, this is exactly what would happen in the world.
Right.
If there was a zombie apocalypse, this is what we would do. We would have people on Jerry Springer. Not that Jerry Springer's a thing anymore, but we would have people on Jerry Springer with their zombie significant others. Right? We would have zombies being the checkers at Walmart. It's just like...
Elon Musk has monetized zombies by putting them in the basement level of his train, and they now generate electricity, which powers you to get to... And it would be Google sponsored zombies to run server farms and
yes, that would absolutely be a thing, and it's depressing.
Yeah,
it's really depressing. It does not speak well of humanity.
So, in terms of the Britishness of it, other than everyone looked unhappy because of the weather, probably. Like it's very there is an aspect of this that you can transplant this to any suburb of any city in the world, largely. This could be the outskirts of Raleigh, I'm sure.
Probably, yeah.
But at the same time, there's cornettos and buses and...
Well, but I mean, there are places that have public transportation and, corner shops like that.
Right, yeah, true.
I mean, this honestly could have been in Queens. Take the subway and the corner bodega, right?
See, well, that's the nice thing about this. It's not London. It's not necessarily on the tube line and getting into the, the financial heart of the city and all this kind of thing. It's not quite that. It is still people living in houses, whether they're terraced or semis, this kind of thing. So it's not quite... Most zombie films, and we should get into zombie films in a sec, but most zombie films will do people flee the cities and trample over each other and queues all the way up the interstate and all this sort of thing. This is doing what if actually people are a little bit more spread out, but also living in close proximity to each other. Yeah.
As a resident Brit, did it come across as super British to you? Or fairly generic?
I think generic and again, this is partially to make sure it can be sold internationally more easily. They don't lean too heavily on things. Certainly when we get to... I have a feeling Lock, Stock might feel more British in some of its stuff. But I feel like they did sand off some of those edges to make it more accessible. Okay. But there, you have pointed out things like pub culture. It's just a thing. Just go down the pub. That's what you do. You go down the pub of an evening. And pubs were absolutely central to British society for a blooming long time. And there are arguments over whether they are now, whether they should be now. But fine. The fact that he works in this small electronics home equipment store, which we look at, we're like...
God, those TVs were so big.
Right. But they're just, we watch that, we're like, oh, it's Dixon's. Okay, that's basically where he works. You're not saying any specific thing, I assume, but you are understanding, like, okay, it's a home electronics store.
Right.
So I think it's a layer of reference, maybe, that's the difference, but
Okay.
not a reference that leaves you out. If you don't, quite get the thing, it's still not a problem.
Right, right.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
Cool.
It was an interesting time for a zombie film to come out because, like, Dawn of the Dead came out at this time, and I think we'd had 28 Days Later, but by and large, zombie films were not a thing at this point.
When did The Walking Dead start?
You'll have to tell me.
2010.
Mm. So the comic book was presumably going, but
Mm-hmm.
basically no one had
Yeah, but
really
the show-
done much on the zombie series except for the George A. Romero stuff. There were a few, 80s horror movies around it and so on. I mean, Zombieland would be 5 years after this, so...
Yeah, the comic book series started in October 2003.
Oh, okay, wow. So this was...
So it was very, very close.
This was definitely being written before then, because this was written sometime around 2000, 2001. How interesting. To the extent Letterboxd do, we reference Letterboxd as the film social network thing. They do a showdown every so often of like, give us your top 10 films about X. And then they collate all the different people who rated films and say, like, most people rated this one, this got the highest number of ratings and so on. And they do their top 20 of whatever the subject is. Shaun of the Dead is the number 1 zombie film, according to that showdown.
Really?
With Night of the Living Dead at 2, 28 Days Later, Zombieland, and then Dawn of the Dead as the top 5.
Okay.
This is considered one of the top zombie films. And I think, yeah, I can see it. It does zombies really well. It doesn't mess with the formula. Because that was the problem with, like, 28 Days Later. The zombies run, and they're really aggressive and so on. Whereas this does zombies in a really classical way. But clearly in a world where zombies do not exist, because they don't know how to deal with zombies immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite fun, sort of. It's nice to see them working out what to do and how to do. Possibly because, maybe it's because it had been a while since a good zombie film had come out.
Maybe. I have just been reminded of another zombie movie
Go on.
that I've seen. I Am Legend.
Yeah.
It's a, like, zombire
Because
more than just zombie.
I think they are vampires in the book. Because there was an early vampire film called something like The Last Man on Earth, which is based on the I Am Legend book.
Okay. And then there's a zombie movie that came out a couple years ago that I really wanted to see because it has Matt Smith in it, but I haven't seen it yet, called Patient Zero.
Okay.
It's got Stanley Tucci and Natalie Dormer. I really want to watch it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I don't think I want to see that, thank you.
Really?
It gets a 4 out of 10 average.
Oh, you looked at Letterboxd?
So.
It's got Stanley Tucci and Natalie Dormer. How can you not want to watch that?
Because it gets a 4 average. This is part of the thing. No one has done particularly anything with the zombie movie in a very long time. Zombie movies are fairly standard stuff. Occasionally there's one that stands out as doing something a bit different. There was a film called Warm Bodies. Did you see that?
I've read the book. I have not seen the movie.
I enjoyed that. That was good. That's on Netflix at the moment. I did enjoy that, but also Nicholas Hoult goes a very long way with me. So.
Okay. I recognize his name, but couldn't tell you anything about him.
He was Beast in the X-Men prequel series.
Okay.
Good. So the Britishness didn't stand out to you?
No, there were a few things about it, like Penelope Wilton, Bill Nighy.
Penelope Wilton's in this.
Right, I was like, oh my God, it's Harriet Jones, Prime Minister.
Harriet Jones, Prime Minister.
Well, yes, I know who you are.
Oh, of course, yes. Hey,
Which is where I know her from. She did that before she was in Downton Abbey. She did this before she was in Doctor Who. Because Doctor Who hadn't come back yet.
She is in a comedy series called Ever Decreasing Circles. Let me just look up to make sure I reference this properly. This is another one of those classic sitcoms. It's the classic sitcom because it's the couple living in a neighborhood and, they have neighbors who are awkward and the thing of British life and British living, and isn't it funny and absurd? when we write it in a comedy show. Except the central character, played by Richard Briers, and his wife is Penelope Wilton, he's the annoying one. In any other TV show, he would be the neighbour who is fastidious and asking you to turn your music down and asking you to park 2 inches further back because you've parked too close, and you shouldn't join the cricket team because the cricket team does this and I'm on the cricket team and all this.
20th century studies.
Sounds interesting.
20th century studies?
Yes.
Oh, which 20th century study would that be then? Geography, history, science?
No, the course is called 20th century studies.
Are you sure they've got that right?
In any other series, he would be the neighbour. And in this, he's the central character.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so there is an aspect of it that she was the wife in that, and she is in some ways playing the same character here. It's just that nice, happy British suburban living.
Yeah, I noticed she was significantly different than the other characters I've seen her play. But I'm mostly familiar with Doctor Who and Downton Abbey. Yeah. But that's very different from
much
this one.
Different power.
It struck me in this one that they kept showing her. So when they were making the plan of what they were going to do, and so they kept running through the scenarios, and it was the same except for like one thing would change.
Yep.
Every time, right after they killed Philip, they showed her running out of the house with them, and she always had this huge happy grin on her face. And I'm like, dude, they just killed her husband.
Yeah, he does not think of his mum as a person. She's his mum.
No. Yes, exactly. Yeah. But I do like completely off topic of Penelope Wilton, I do like, though, that his first instinct was to save his mom even before saving Liz.
Yeah.
So, there's that.
I like the setup for that of Bill Nye visiting him and talking about his bi-monthly visits.
I trust you haven't forgotten about tomorrow.
No.
Your bi-monthly visit.
No, I haven't forgotten.
And it's really interesting to use the bi-monthly. We don't know if that's every 2 months or twice a month.
Right.
Very nice.
Yes.
And just obviously his mum's important, but important because of the familiarity with his... this goes back to that coming of age thing. The familiarity with his youth and the comfort of that.
Right.
His mum not being there and being in danger would be horrendous.
Yeah. Distanced enough from him, though, that Philip, that's not my dad, that's my stepdad.
She died.
He's not my dad. He's my stepdad.
Dude's been in his life since he was 12. And that's still the first thing he says every time, right? So they're not a close family. No. So I found that interesting. I was so surprised to see Bill Nighy show up, and then I was like, duh, this is a British film, of course he's going to show up.
Yeah, this is the thing I say. And to be fair, this is one of the things that made Bill Nighy famous in the modern cinema. Okay. This was one of his early performances. So it's hard to have anything against him here because he's also actually quite good. The emotional bit that he has to deliver in the car, he delivers really well.
He does.
It's really good. It's very touching.
Yes.
But he is also doing the Bill Nighy thing all the way through.
Yes, he is. He has this way about him. The way he carries himself. Yeah. It's just very Bill Nighy. Interesting thing for me, and I didn't recognize this, I have to bring our conversation back around to Destiny. Joseph walks through and goes, that's the speaker. And I was like, what?
The darkness, its ancient enemy. There are many tales told throughout the city to frighten children. Lately, those tales have stopped. Now, the children are frightened anyway. The darkness is coming back. We will not survive it this time.
He voiced the speaker in Destiny. I don't know if you've gone through those bits of the campaign, but it's like, oh my gosh.
He was the voice of Samwise Gamgee in the 1981 Lord of the Rings radio series. Really? The one that had Ian Holm as Bilbo.
As Frodo.
As Frodo, sorry.
Frodo, yeah.
Don't worry, Mr. Frodo. I won't let this farmer maggot do you no harm. If he tries, he'll have Sam Gamgee to reckon with. Thank you, Sam.
He was Samwise.
Okay, I've listened to that, but I listened to it before I would have recognized been able to put names with
And
voices.
you can kind of see it because he does have a great voice and a great way of speaking. You can absolutely see him doing voice acting, and particularly younger in his career, I would imagine. Like I think he did a good amount of theatre as well. I can imagine him being really good at delivering on stage.
Yes.
But because he also delivers quite quiet performances, you have to sort of keep up with him. He's very Christopher Walken. Christopher Walken does the same sort of thing. Over the years, I think film suits him because it can pick up on some of the nuance of what he does.
Yes.
So yes, it's a British film. It's got Bill Nye in it.
Yes.
But then it's also got Dylan Moran in it, and it's got Lucy Davis in it. Who and when he meets the other group of people survivors, and it's Martin Freeman, and it's Matt Lucas.
That's who that was.
That's exactly who it was.
I was like, I recognize his face, but I cannot place it. Matt Lucas, yes, that's who it was. Thank you.
They are all, Peter Serafinowicz is in this from The Tick and Guardians of the Galaxy. A standard British actor. Lucy Davis, I mentioned, she is the daughter of Jasper Carrott, who's a famous comedian, but she was a very minor role in the Pride and Prejudice series we watched, and she is Etta Candy in Wonder Woman, his secretary.
Oh, okay. Okay.
She is herself a very good comedy actor. Very small part in this. And Dylan Moran is also a comedian. So Davs, the guy who fancies Liz, he is also a comedian who
Cusack
basically that is his shtick. This sort of, you look like an accountant thing.
Yeah, okay. You didn't hear what I called him, did you?
What did you call him?
John Cusack Light.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
What else has he done?
He's one of those sort of establishment types over here. He just turns up on TV comedy things, TV comedy specials, random stuff he's in. I'm trying to look. There's nothing that's standing out to me.
Okay.
But let's circle around to Nick Frost, and particularly the character of Ed. Because this film does not want you to like Ed. It works really hard at making him pretty abhorrent. The fact that basically his first line ends with him calling everyone the C word. That's quite an opening to your film.
That wasn't, well, okay, that was his first, line of dialogue, but his actual introduction was when he was playing the game, pinball machine.
The game, yes. Slot machine.
And
basically.
They cut his reactions to the game fit into what they were trying to say in their conversation, but they couldn't say those words.
Yep.
And I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
I really liked it. And so I was already set up to enjoy this character. Be entertained by this character.
Yeah.
Even though he's kind of a terrible person, but you can also understand why Shaun loves him.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. He's
friends.
a cheeky, chappy, fun to have around type who makes fart jokes, who makes gay jokes, who does all of this sort of thing. But he's also quite entertaining. So you sort of get it.
I'll stop when you stop laughing.
Right? Yeah.
Right? Yes. I think we all have friends like that. So I enjoyed his character immensely.
Yeah.
And I'm actually really, really glad we got that tag at the end where they didn't kill him. They chained him up in the shed.
Yeah.
So he can still play video games every day.
But it's a really well-written relationship because, yeah, you get it. You see it. It's pretty effortless as well.
Yes.
And I also dig that although they do make gay jokes in it, it sits on the, Frodo and Samwise side of, it's a bromance.
Oh, absolutely. Very much a bromance.
They're utterly there for each other, but it's not one that you ship and write fanfic about.
Right. He jokes and calls him babe.
Yeah.
He's like, he's not my boyfriend. Thanks, babe.
Yeah, it's an absolute setup, but it's perfect.
Yes, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Shall we talk about our favorite moments?
Did you have favorite moments?
I did. Well, I loved Penelope Wilton, obviously, because she's amazing.
The way
really
she turns around to him when he says, "Philip touched me," and she just turns around and looks at him, and he's like, "That was a lie. I'm sorry." Like, yeah, because you don't accuse someone of that without it being true,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So I like that she turned around enough that it was simultaneous. She's really annoyed that he would make the accusation, but also wanting to make sure that he's not serious, like willing to take him serious if it is true.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we both know you're lying. And so he comes clean,
Yeah.
right? I thought that was a great moment. I really liked the Yvonne 3-beat.
So Yvonne was the friend who basically rescues them in the end?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Shaun,
Yvonne.
how's it going?
Surviving.
The leader of the other group that was exactly the same as their group. Like, to the point that after we met her the first time, I fully expected somehow, and this is a Hollywood trope, not a British movie trope, but I fully expected the movie to end with Shaun and Yvonne having teamed up.
Right.
And they were going to live happily ever after. But instead, they have their own separate groups that are nearly identical because everybody in Britain's the same, obviously. That's why you only need 7 actors to be in the movie.
Basically, right? So, you remember I mentioned that this is... they did an episode of the series Spaced about zombies, and this was sort of that was the progenitor of this. She's the co-creator of Spaced with Simon Pegg, and she's the female lead and he's the male lead. The setup of it is they meet for reasons, and they're both looking for somewhere to live, and they find somewhere to live, but you need to be a couple to live there. So they move in together, pretending to be a couple, but in separate rooms. And I've never made it past episode 2. It just did not work for me. And everyone says I would love it. I cannot make it into that series, and I'm really sorry.
Okay.
Because he
sounds interesting.
He is a comic book writer, geek. He references Terminator 2 in the opening of the first episode, all this sort of thing. But there's none of that in the next 2 episodes. So,
okay. Interesting.
At some point I will make them through. But that's effectively why she's in this, because she's a little bit of a nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Oh, hey, it's that girl who I was in that series with that you're watching this because you like that series.
Yeah. That's neat. I didn't have to know that to like her.
No, exactly.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fight scene in the pub set to Queen.
Right.
Oh my God. That was amazing.
Right. So now we can talk Edgar Wright.
Okay.
Because that's Edgar Wright's style. That's what he does. He does the fast cuts of when Shaun's going to work and you show him drinking his tea, unzipping his trousers, flushing the toilet, and closing the front door. That's sort of 4 1-second shots to show bang, 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 and now he's at work. We can just move on with the story. We don't have to do anything. And that's a little bit what that thing is, then timing the thing to go with the music and so on. It's his style to be really nippy, but really interesting with the camera. And to do stuff you wouldn't normally see in a film. He's, sort of, new wave of directors.
Which my understanding is part of what made Baby Driver so
exactly. So when he gets to Baby Driver and suddenly all the work he's done in music videos and commercials and films and so on before, he basically makes a film of it. Is what he does.
Yeah. I thought it was fantastic. I loved it.
Yeah. If you enjoyed that, you would probably enjoy Baby Driver.
Okay.
Because it is basically a film of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It might be a little too much, but I'll probably give it a try
one day. Well, yeah.
There was some great dialogue in this. Like some one-liners. Simon Pegg getting the zombies to chase him, and he yells, "It's a running buffet. All you can eat. Come and get me." I got cracked up. It's pretty great.
He's really good at dialogue delivery. I mean, that's his strong point. I think the emotion stuff, okay. The brave, I'm going to take charge stuff, a little bit much. He kind of puts on a faux American accent. Something a bit transatlantic when he's doing the, hey, are we all going to go and get in the car and go and do this thing? Yeah. But when he has to do comedy, he knows how to do it. When he bashes himself on the head by mistake, and he's like, bop him on the head. Ow.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. I think I can forgive him a little bit for trying to be a little over the top because I feel like somebody who's lived his life, like video games have prepared him for this
Right,
moment,
that's fair. Yeah.
But he's done it from the couch, right? He's never physically had to do it. And so you have to get yourself in that mindset and you have to turn yourself into this over the top and steel yourself. Okay,
Yeah.
here's what I'm going to do. And that's exactly what he does. And it felt, it felt as realistic as a zombie movie can
Okay,
feel
yeah.
in that moment. Like, I feel like I would probably react the same way.
Right.
I don't know that I would have, like, chucked vinyl records at a zombie trying to kill them, or like thrown a toaster at them. I would have gone to the shed to find the shovel and the cricket bat first, but I get it,
because that's effectively like almost the trailer stuff for it. The bit of him shuffling his feet and so on, and then them throwing vinyls. It's that joke of, if you were in your house now and had to try to defeat a zombie, what would you use? Like, well, I've got some records here.
Right.
Play the record, see what happens. Yeah.
But not that one, because I really like it.
Yeah, and then the comedy of sorting through their vinyl, yeah. And that's shorthand to tell you exactly the sort of people they are. They are nerdy about their music, about their games, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. My kind of people.
But yeah, that you've made me think, and it's because of the Destiny reference earlier, that sort of, the faux American accent is like Zavala turning around and being like, Guardian, you need to go and fight and do this thing. It's, I'm going to stand on the battlefield with my hands.
Yes, very much so. All right, what about you? I know you really like this movie.
Yeah, like I say, it works so much better on DVD. When I watched it on TV, having watched it at the cinema a year or two before, I enjoyed it so much more. And talking on the direction, the sort of juxtaposed scenes where he gets up and he gets ready for work and he goes to the shop and he comes back, and you see all the things in the street, and that's one long tracking shot, and showing all the streets going on around him. And then they do basically the same tracking shot the next day, except now it's a zombie apocalypse. So the world is fundamentally different, but it's delightful. In you can just about see how he would miss the bloody handprints, and that he's slipped on blood, and that the guy's a zombie in the background because he's hungover and he just wants his Coke and he just wants his ice cream. Yeah.
Before this year, before 2020, I would have thought it was impossible to be that oblivious to a world-changing event. But I totally buy it now.
Yeah.
Which is really depressing.
Yeah.
But I can see it now, and
And it is really strange seeing this, people on the bus next to each other getting unwell, and
there was a dude hacking on that bus, and I was like, dude, you're not wearing a mask. Y'all aren't social distancing. Like, that's my initial reaction to things now. And this was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, not quite 20 years ago, but 16. Our reactions to everything is different now.
It is going to be really strange watching stuff on TV, and as it's made now, being like, I'm not sure that's true to life anymore. I'm not sure people would sit that close, and yeah. So no, they are wonderful, and they make the film. They are a huge part of the advertising for it, because it's so important that it is just this guy who isn't aware it's going on. Yeah. The film, I think, is at its strongest when they do once they know what's happening, and they, exactly like you said, they start coming up with a plan. Right, we take the car, we go to Mum's, we kill Philip, get Liz, go to the pub, have a pint of beer till it all blows over. All of that bit. And then into getting the car and finding out that Pete's a zombie. Finally getting, running someone over and then checking he's a zombie, it's okay. And then getting there and having to deal with Philip, and Philip has been bitten but isn't dead, so how do we deal with this now? Then getting to Liz, it's like, it's just set piece after set piece after set piece, which is very TV more than film. But it all works. And you finally get into them taking a shortcut. Him being like, what's the matter, David? Never taken a shortcut. And the fence falls over on him. It's such a small gag. Again, a bit of a TV gag. But it's really funny because he is being the triumphant, hey man, I'm going to get you out and save you from this. But at the same time, the fence has fallen over on him. It's so small time.
Yes, no, absolutely. Everything. Even, him taking the zombies away, but then they follow him back. Right? Like,
it just doesn't quite come
no
off.
Point in what he did. Yeah.
And like when he's fighting the zombie in the back garden sequence, and they give him the swing ball set, and he tries to hit him with a tennis ball.
And then the girls are like, no, jab him. Yeah.
The thing I love, and I think when I watched this, I didn't know what Chekhov's gun is. And now I know what Chekhov's gun is. This film has possibly the best Chekhov's gun we've ever seen, by the fact they actually point at a gun and say, what about that gun? That gun's not loaded. And they reference it several times, building up to,
oh, that gun's not real.
Is it loaded? Is it real? And then we find out, yes, it is.
Yeah.
But it's brilliant. They're messing with the sort of meta idea of Chekhov's gun by pointing it out, pointing at that gun on the wall, and whether it's going to go off or not.
Right.
It's very good.
Yes,
yeah.
It's literal. Quite literal, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. It has some wonderful bits of writing, really good. And it is a very good film.
It is. It is a very good film. I really don't think I have any actual complaints about it.
Okay. I mean, like I say, that Act 3.
We talked about this. The story kind of fades away a little bit, but I still enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the closure, I guess, we got. Like, I mean, it had a very definite end.
Yeah.
They get out of the pub, life goes back to normal, except now they have zombie slaves.
Yeah. And I love this, it's such a short shot of the flat at the end where she's now moved into the house and has redecorated, but it still has some of the same furniture and the same layout. You know this is the same place, but it now feels mature. And it is that transition from when he was living with his mates that he went to uni with, and they smoke and weed and play video games and fart.
Yeah.
And now it's a grown-up house, in inverted commas.
But their plans for the day are still going to be go hang out in the pub.
Yeah.
And then come back and go to
sleep.
sleep.
It is still the same life. Life has, like you say, utterly returned to normal.
Yeah. I do want to make one correction to something I just said. I called them zombie slaves. They are mobile deceased slaves.
It's great.
Which I thought was great. Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else that we need to discuss about Shaun of the Dead?
I mean, we're going to watch Hot Fuzz.
Eventually, but not part of British Movie Month.
I feel a little bit like a break would be good.
Okay.
Because there are such similarities between them. Because same director, some of the same cast, all this sort of thing. Actually, the separation will do you good. I think, whether that's true or not. And there is no way to do A/B testing, so we're not. But zombie films. I mean, I've mentioned a lot of zombie films in here. We've talked about zombie stories and things. Does the trappings of this film and the genre call to you now to want to see any more?
Some. I mean, I do want to see Zombieland 2.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'm interested in Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, okay. Part of the thing with those films is each film, we talked about this with the Knives Out episode, each of the Dead films is about a subject matter. Night of the Living Dead is about racism in America.
Really?
Basically. Dawn of the Dead is about capitalism in America. And so on.
I had no idea.
Dawn of the Dead is very, and actually Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead is pretty good. I actually quite enjoyed it, I will admit. I can't really remember the original, but I think I enjoyed it as well. Night of the Living Dead is a classic, though. So much of a classic. You know when they're on the phone to his mum?
I don't want to cause a fuss.
We're coming to get you, Barbara!
Mm-hmm.
That's a line from the opening of Night of the Living Dead.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Like, they are pulling from the genre to do it as an homage. And I think part of that is they did advertise it very heavily on the sort of horror convention circuit. They were appealing to horror fans, saying, we're going to give you a new horror film that you're going to treat as a classic.
Okay. Do you have to watch Night of the Living Dead to watch the original Dawn of the Dead?
No. The films are, and it really very much is. One is zombies start attacking. Zombies are attacking, we're dealing with it. Zombies have been attacking, and how are we dealing with it? Each film sort of progresses a little bit further into a zombie apocalypse.
Okay. So at the end of Night of the Living Dead, they haven't, stopped the apocalypse? No. Okay. Interesting. I might be interested in doing, a double feature of both Dawn of the Dead.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because seeing that the 2004 one was directed by Zack Snyder and written by James Gunn has me very intrigued.
I remember thoroughly enjoying it, although admittedly, because I saw it twice at the cinema. I saw it once, I think, with friends and enjoyed it. Saw it with a girl that it was, I think, the second or third film we went to see. And I'll tell the story. We were holding hands underneath the armrest of the chairs. Early date, so, I want to hold your hand. And then there was a jump scare, and she jumped and smacked her hand on the seat and possibly broke her hand, because it was incredibly painful for the next few weeks.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Yeah. But I didn't know until later, because she was like, "Oh, we want a date. I wanted to hold your hand." So it's just like you.
Wait, so she was in pain the rest
She
of the
was
time
still
she was
holding my hand and trying to downplay it.
Aww. That's sad. Ving Rhames is also
Ving Rhames is
Dawn of the
very
Dead.
good in that. And that's why I thought of Ty Burrell as the kind of guy you go, right? What? Because Ty Burrell, I'm sure, has been in a series of films as someone like people go out with. Oh, he's in the National Treasure films as the alternative date.
I had to look up who he was. He's in Modern Family.
Yes, he is in Modern Family. Oh, and the Incredible Hulk. He's the new other half in the Incredible Hulk as well. Another actor in the MCU. Okay, so maybe that's the one to do. Night of the Living Dead is very good.
But it's black and white.
Mm-hmm.
It's a black and white horror movie when they didn't know how to do special effects yet.
Does that matter?
Maybe.
Okay. You heathen.
I'm just being honest.
Okay.
I don't know. You might be able to twist my arm. If enough people want me to watch it, I will definitely watch it.
It's really hard because it has been a very long time since I saw it. But it sort of, for everything else that happens, it redeems itself at the very end of the film. Like the final shot to oh wow, okay.
Okay.
So if you don't, I will talk you through the film and tell you what happens.
Okay. I do want to read the book for World War Z now.
That I thoroughly recommend. I loved it. It's a book I've bought for people and said, here, read this.
Okay.
And I think Max Brooks has not been cancelled. I thought he had been for a period, but I don't think he actually was. I think I was thinking of another Max, son of a famous author, famous person.
Okay. All right. Well, if you would like to join the conversation, you can use the hashtag PCDeprived on Twitter. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Eloquent Gushing, or you can send us an email to podcast@eloquentgushing.com.
Pop Culture Deprived is completely funded by our listeners through Patreon. Anything you give, even $1 a month, it helps to support the networks, it helps to develop the shows that we develop, and it helps us to provide exclusive content through Patreon, such as our Matrix recording that we did a while ago, bonus shows, extra shows, and some physical merch that we send out to you because we love you very much when you support us. So if you want to find out more, you can go to patreon.com/eloquentgushing.
And we will be back next week with another episode where we will continue British Movie Month with Remains of the Day. Until then, I am Mandy Kay.
And it's not the end of the world.
That ended up being true.
Pop Culturally Deprived is an Eloquent Gushing production. For more information, go to eloquentgushing.com or find us on Twitter @eloquentgushing.